Okay, we'll call the agenda and priorities meeting to order. It's 3 p.m. February the 5th. I'll ask Councillor Wing to please read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wing. And we'll move into 2.1. Are there any additions or deletions? Oh, can I please have someone to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barclay, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we will move into 3.1 with Director Vickers with an LGFF overview.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barclay. So this report is just to provide council with some information regarding the local government fiscal framework. So the Local Government Fiscal Framework, or LGFF for short, is now Alberta's primary funding mechanism for providing local governments with predictable infrastructure and operating grant support. LGFF funding is allocated annually to eligible recipients based on a funding formula, and the LGFF has replaced the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, or what we would used to call MSI, which was in place from 2007 to 2023. So the new LGFF has two components: a capital funding component and an operating funding component. Capital funding is legislated through the Local Government Fiscal Framework Act and is allocated to eligible local governments based on a formula. Local governments may use the funds for infrastructure priorities within the program rules. Operating funding is also allocation-based, and eligible local governments can use the fundings in support of capacity building activities to improve efficiency and effectiveness, municipal services and planning activities. This funding, however, is not legislated and is simply based on budgetary factors for the provincial government. So as you can see the picture there, the transition from MSI to LGFF. So MSI used to have an MSI operating, and now we have an LGFF operating. Under the capital, we used to have the MSI capital and the Basic Municipal Transportation Grant, which was the BMTG. And now under capital, we have the Charter Cities LGF capital pot, which is for Calgary and Edmonton alone. And then we have our non-charter municipalities, which is for the rest of all local governments in Alberta. So the funding is allocated between Calgary and Edmonton based on the following funding formula outlined in the Act. So it's calculated based on 48% of population, 48% education tax requirements, and 4% of kilometers of local roads. So the remaining local governments receive their funding based on the following formula. So population is set at 65%, tangible capital assets is at 15%, amortization of tangible capital assets is at 10%, kilometers of local road is at 10%. There is a base set at $150,000 for every municipality, except for the summer villages, and they receive a $60,000 base, as well as there is a needs-based component. So this is 3% of overall funding. Needs-based funding is set at 3% of total funding for local governments other than Calgary and Edmonton, with 60% of needs-based funding allocated to urban municipalities and settlements and 40% allocated to rural municipalities. For an urban municipality to be eligible for needs-based funding, its population must be less than 10,000 and its equalized assessment per capita must be below 80% of the provincial average. For this purpose, provincial averaged equalization assessment per capita is based on urban municipalities with fewer than 10,000 people. I did want to bring in the LGFF capital allocation formula. This did come from the AB Muni's slide deck that they did show out. Members of council administration did attend an LGFF seminar put on by AB Muni's, and they did send out their entire slide deck. However, those slides were private and not for public use, which is why some of that information is not included within this report. Okay, so the LGFF operating funding is currently set at 60 million annually. So budget 2024 allocation amounts to local governments are expected to remain fixed at that same level as operating funding allocated under MSI was in 2023. In 2024, local governments will receive 722 million for LGFF capital. Of the 722 million, 382 million will be provided to Calgary and Edmonton, with 340 million will be provided to the remaining local governments. Funding amounts in subsequent years will reflect the percentage change, in provincial revenues from 3 years prior. It has already been announced that LGFF funding will increase by 13.6% from the 2024 level, in line with growth in the provincial revenues between 2021 to 22 and 2022 to 23. This equates to a 98 million increase to the annual LGFF funding allocations. In 2025, 820 million will be made to Alberta communities. Of that, Calgary and Edmonton will receive 343 million, and the remaining local governments will receive 386 million. I did want to put a few slides that have been floating around right now. So this first one, these both came from Alberta municipalities. So at its start, LGFF Capital will deliver 36% less funding than the historical average, from 2011 to 2020. Before the province front-loaded the 22 and 23 funding in the 2021 year. So you can see 21 kind of hits that dotted line, but in 22 and 23, they're vastly below that line. So those 3 years kind of break out an average that kind of evens it out. In the next picture, in 2011, the province invested $420 per Albertan for community infrastructure. This year, in 23, that amount is expected to only be $175 per Albertan. And just, I believe on the next page, I actually calculated out what Innisfail's per capita is, and it's even much less than that. So you can see here that on December 15th, the allocations were released by the provincial government, and our allocations are there. So for LGFF Capital, in 2024, we are receiving just above 1.1 million, and then in 2025, we receive 1,265,000. So the per capita in 24 is actually only 138.97 per capita in capital funding. And then in 2025, it does go up to 158.49, but still far less than even what the province is doing across the board. We do have a 2024 capital project. It is our 2024 surface improvements. It was to be funded by LGFF. Administration will be bringing forward a budget adjustment at a future regular council meeting to update the funding sources and to identify the gap that's now there. So they did talk about where they're getting these calculations from. So in 2024, calculations are based on the 2019 municipal affairs population lists, the 2021 book value of tangible capital assets, that's excluding electricity and gas distribution systems, machinery and equipment, and land, the average annual cumulative amortization, and for the 2017 to 21 period, and the 2021 length of local roads. In addition, the 2021 equalized assessment data is used in the calculation of needs-based funding. And it goes on to talk about the same thing for 2025 and what years of those calculations they used. LGFF funding for Calgary and Edmonton and the total LGFF funding pot for other local governments must be communicated by September 30th, 2 years in advance. The provincial government anticipates that when this information is released by September 30th, individual allocations should be announced several weeks later. So by the time we're sitting and doing our budget deliberations, we should know what our next 2 years of LGFF funding is. So the 26 LGFF allocation should be released in the fall of this year. So the future amount of funding each local government will be allocated will depend on the overall LGFF funding available and how each local government's formula factors change relative to other local governments. The 722 million in LGFF baseline funding does not begin to address Alberta's 30 billion and growing infrastructure debt. Local governments across Alberta voted on emergent resolution at the 2023 AB Munis Conference. Since then, AB Munis has been calling on the provincial government to increase the amount by $1 billion to $1.75 billion. AB Munis continues to lobby the provincial government on the following initiatives. So AB Munis and member municipalities are advocating for the starting amount of the LGFF capital pot to be increased to that $1.75 billion number. They request that the province to collect more comprehensive data on kilometer of local roads, including kilometer of road lanes, and the type of service material to create more equitable funding outcomes between municipalities. They're requesting that the LGFF capital allocation formula integrate tangible capital asset data that is currently not reported by municipalities because the local infrastructure is managed by a municipally controlled corporation. And they request that the allocation formula base be increased every 3 to 5 years based on inflation to support smaller municipalities that are more reliant on the base amount. And additionally, administration has been invited to another information session that is being put on by Municipal Affairs, and I will be attending that session tomorrow afternoon. So at this time, I'll take any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, thank you, Director Vickers. Does anybody have any questions? Well, I have questions. Can you find out, Director Vickers, I don't think we've ever got a clear understanding of operating and how that's calculated. And then if you have an opportunity tomorrow, I know in some of the verbiage that Alberta municipalities had, like on page 4, that there was an expectation that the amount this year was going to remain the same as the amount last year, which it hasn't, at least for us. And then my other concern, I think, population, so that's not changing. And how does that change? Does that change through a new census, or because it's the same this year as it was last year as it is next year? Mm-hmm. And then I know that Alberta Munis did so much advocacy on the growth component, but one of my concerns is when revenue growth goes the other way, because we know it will. So right now, we're getting a 13.6% increase next year. I think resource revenue is about $16 billion of the budget. And if that doesn't, you know, we've seen that fall, right? Like in 2015, I think it was 3 point some million, so huge difference. So what happens, let's say something happens and we have another global event or whatever, and we see the revenues that we rely on so much in this province go from what it is to it decreases 20%. You know, how do we, you know, that's a huge risk for us, right? In trying to plan going forward. Mm-hmm. So where should we be, have those numbers when we plan going forward? Do we look at kind of the average for the last 10 years, what the provincial revenue is, and go from that, as opposed to now we kind of see this growth because we've seen an oil price that's gone up over 100. Now it's probably in the low 70s. Yes. I think 72 is kind of the break-even point for the provincial budget. So if we're not above 72, then we're going to see deficits in the province. So
I will double check on that, Mayor Barclay. I do know that before they changed it to 100% growth rate with revenues, it was sitting at a 50% rate.
Yep.
And they had it at 50% to protect when we did go under, because we would get a decrease.
Yep.
I'm assuming that the same would be said now that it's 100%. We will still get the decrease, but I will double check on that.
Well, I believe we will too, I guess. What I just want us to be cognizant going forward, like how do we plan for the future when we might be on the same roller coaster,
Yes.
or we will be, if we don't have a substantial increase in the funding pot.
Even what we're getting right now is not nearly enough for what we need.
No.
Right?
So those are just some of the inquiries I have.
I will have to get back to you on some of
Oh, of
these.
course, yeah.
I'll try to get as many questions as I can tomorrow. I doubt they'll want to talk about the operating and how that's calculated, so that may be, I'll have to send off and do some research other way. But definitely the population question and where they get that information, that should be answered tomorrow for sure.
Okay.
And well, with the population growth, I'm sure it will be a static answer that says, yes, it's going to go up or down as indexed as the growth, but
But how do they index it? Like they're...
I'm not sure. I'll have to
Okay,
look at how
okay.
what they're looking at. Is it just their revenue, like their profit, or their surplus, or how does that work?
Okay.
I'll look into that for sure.
Okay. Councillor Wing?
Yeah, just two questions. So in the notes at the end of this document, talks about the LGFF allocations for the charter cities as including education property tax, but not for the others. So why is that? What's happening there relative to us?
So as a part of, sorry, Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Wing, as a part of the, like what AB Munis and the RMA, in part of their lobbying to the government when they were designing this, they wanted that to be taken out. And they felt that that was an unfair characterization, just if we had a higher school tax than a neighboring municipality or things like that, right?
Okay, so will we continue to collect a school tax? On our
Absolutely, yes,
Okay.
yes. We still collect school tax and remit back to the province
Okay.
on behalf of the schools.
Okay, and then when you're having the population conversation, I'm curious moving forward if they're going to continue to refer to the municipal affairs numbers versus Treasury Board, because other departments such as libraries have been changed from
To the Treasury Board.
to
yeah.
Treasury Board numbers, so it would be
I'll
good to know
double
that.
check on that
Thank
too.
you.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like some things you'd like it to be lower and other things you'd like it to be higher, so, yeah. Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, to Director Vickers, is tomorrow an advocacy opportunity, or is it just more of an administrative update for administrators?
Yeah, Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Heistad. So this is more of an administrator item. We'll be looking at the portal. We're going to be looking at the transition. How do we spend MSI money and LGFF money on the same kind of project? That kind of thing, right? So.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Looks like all the questions we have, so we'll just have somebody please make a motion that we accept the report as information, and thanks for all your work on this, Director Vickers. Councillor Bates?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll move into correspondence and information. Did you want to just scroll through a little bit, Vanessa, on the correspondence, or? Okay, thanks. Okay, next. Okay, anybody have any questions about any of this correspondence? If not, I'll please have somebody make a motion.
I've got a question, Mayor
Okay,
Barclay.
go ahead.
The letter from Sherry Emberg as a response to your meeting, does that effectively telling us that there's really nothing that they're going to do?
No, I wouldn't say that. I took it more so, I know the ministry was going to make an announcement today, but it got canceled due to weather. Maybe he couldn't get to Edmonton or something, I don't know, but you know, I think what that letter sets out is that pick a funding pot that you might pull from for the Aquatic Centre, and, you know, you can use your MSI or LGFF, or, you know, we'll see. I'm not too confident there's going to be too much, to be honest with you, so I think that's a conversation we need to get into another day, and yeah. For sure. Thanks for the question. Okay, all in favor of the motion? Okay, carried. And we'll go to roundtable discussion with Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Last week, I had my first Parkland Foundation meeting. I know that we'll be doing our full written reports due this Thursday, but just a quick overview. Jill Moores from the Bethany Group highlighted some of Bethany's educational programs that they have online on their platform, which is now going to be opened up to Parkland as well. With the new provincial grants only covering 1/3 as opposed to 80/20, there's going to be very large limitations in what is going to be provided, and it will nearly impossible to replace or add new buildings. We got some new occupancy stats, which I'll share, and then we just had a CAO report. That was about it.
Thank you. And Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, through to Mayor and Council. Again, a very quiet weekend. I spent the last one evening last week with MLA Deletions and his crew, sort of a very informative night. And tomorrow we have MPC, and looking forward to the 2 applications that we've got on the table. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Wing?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So it's been 2 weeks actually since we've met, and for all the quiet time right after Christmas, it was a busy 2 weeks. So I attended the RCMP Town Hall, Municipal Development Action Planning Advisory Committee, Mountain View Regional Water Services Strategic Planning and Consultation Meeting. As a past board chair, I was invited to the Red Deer Polytechnic Impact Breakfast. I've been at 2 Parkland Library Services meetings, the executive committee, and also a subcommittee meeting that's been formed to focus on board member conduct and meeting management strategies. A full day at the Building Resilience and Drought Workshop in Black Falls. Of course, the Family Literacy Day celebrations at the Innisfil Public Library. I was invited to judge at 4-H Speak-Offs, which was delightful. And I also participated or sat in the audience at the Minister Deletions Town Hall meeting on the weekend. This week coming up from Monday to Thursday, this week I'm enrolled in the Subdivision and Development Appeal Certification Training Program, and I'll have my written reports submitted to Juanita by this Thursday, or to Vanessa. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bates?
Okay, same thing, I guess. The written reports will be coming where they're pertinent. But I did also went back to the January 22nd council meeting in the RCMP. My observation there, I always hope to see more people, but I guess we need to beat the bushes. And any and all of us should be pushing the surveys, the safety and well-being community surveys. I've been taking cards here and there that some of us on the committee, but I think we all should do it. The MDP meeting, which I think Councillor Wing agreed she would prepare the primary report because 2 of us went. And the Mountain View Water Strategic Plan, which I will prepare the primary report. A lot of that was actually reported in the media at this point in time already anyway. And I went to the Black Falls Water Alliance presentation preparation for drought. It was kind of interesting in the sense that it was planned for 2 years, and then kind of through COVID and whatever emerged at this particular time where it's very pertinent. It was very compressed in the amount of time that we had there, but I know the manual that was handed out did appear printed in the Water Commission future work, so it's yeah, it was a good day. I went to the Literacy Day, but all I did was help with hot dogs. We did have our first drought committee meeting this morning, and I'll report on that. I will say the initial attempts that we're doing is to try to define what government is really looking for. We seem to have gotten a lot of different shreds of input from conservation, education, talking about sharing, and then potential license overview and that sort of thing. So it seems to be a mixed bag at this point, and we did have a presenter this morning who oversees licenses from Red Deer. Tomorrow I have MPC and a quiet week after that, and I would have attended the constituency open house that happened, but I totally forgot about it.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Messaros?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I was away last week. I missed a lot of interesting events that were taking place around town. I did manage to get my report in on Thursday, but was told that it was in the wrong week. So anyway, getting there. I wanted to say something today during my roundtable. I know at times certain of us have expressed our opinions related to certain current or geopolitical events that are happening. And for me, I've indicated my connection to and support of the LGBT community, particularly as it relates to youth, newcomers and clients that I serve, Alberta human rights legislation, 13 grounds of discrimination, issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and most importantly, my own family. So I felt I could not come to council today without saying something to express my dismay at the proposed anti-trans policy brought forward last week, and the fact that it serves to effectively perpetuate existing stereotypes and myths surrounding transgender individuals, while also removing access to care that should be decided on by family and medical practitioners. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to do a report next week, but I did attend the healthcare presentation Friday night at the library, which was absolutely excellent. It was 2 hours, and I did joke a little bit. It was kind of fitting. It was Groundhog Day because we're reshaping healthcare again. But no, it really was good, and excellent session, and look forward to them coming back at some point in time with a draft of what they're doing. I mean, it's very, very complex, obviously, and there's Minister Dreshen's event Saturday night, and I'll do a report on the rest of everything for next week. So we'll move into upcoming events next. What? Oh, Councillor Heistad, I missed you. I had you ticked off on my list. I'm sorry. That's mean of me.
Well, it wasn't mean of you. You just forgot. That's okay. How could you forget me? Dale snorted. Did you hear that, Johnny? No. Put that in the paper. No. What I'd like to say is I went to the open house with MLA Dreshen on Saturday night. Village meeting this week. I'm going to be attending the health. There's in Sylvan Lake tomorrow morning. There's a session. So I wasn't able to go to the Innisfil healthcare session. So I booked for tomorrow to go to Sylvan Lake to that. I was at the RCMP open house, building resiliency and drought in Blackfalds. And yeah, I think that's it. But I just want to tell Councillor Messaros, I want to thank you for your last comments, and I stand with you in solidarity with your comments, with what's transpired in our provincial halls, and where we need leadership in the legislature regarding trans and LGBTQ community, and I just wanted to thank you for bringing that up today. It's very courageous of you to do so, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll move into upcoming events. We have a wastewater on the 18th, Vanessa, and Cape on the 15th, I believe. Sorry, my fault for probably not getting those to Anita. Please have someone make a motion to.
I've got a couple. Your worship. So I've got a couple.
Okay.
There isn't a Water Commission meeting on the 28th. There is on March the 13th, which this appears to get to. And the next drought committee is March the 6th. Those three.
I have one as well. The library is February 27th at 6 o'clock. Thanks. And I would.
You know what, why don't we, how about everybody just email Vanessa? I think that's easier than trying to keep track, and I know
I'll make the
I need
motion.
I need to do that too, like email a list of when the committees are coming up and, because it's a lot to keep track of.
I would
So-
move, Mayor Barclay, that we
Okay.
accept the dates.
Thank you, Councillor Wing. All in favor? Okay. And then we'll have a motion to go in camera, please.
I will make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?